I'm going to share with you the three-level annotation strategy, what you need to do at each level of this annotation strategy, and then I'll also walk you through an example of how I approach it. So the first level of this annotation strategy is on the lines. This is really trying to pull out the literal meaning, making sure you're keeping track of the who, what, when, where, and why. So really trying to make sure you know the subject of the passage that you're reading, like who is the character, what's the main purpose or point that they're focusing on. But this is also a good part for you to pay close attention to the imagery, some of the word choices that stand out to you through that first read through. So at this level, you want to make sure that you're highlighting, underlining, circling, or even bracketing key words that really stand out to you, or even phrases or sentences. You don't want to go overboard, but it's important to pull out some that really just stand out to you and might strike you a little bit so that you can go back and reconsider them. The second level is between the lines, so kind of like reading between the lines. You want to make this level more inferential and more interpretive. So that means trying to pull out what is being implied with all of these images that you highlighted in level 1. What is being repeated over and over again in the types of words that are being chosen here, is trying to draw conclusions about the abstract, the symbolic, the figurative meaning behind the literal meaning. So this level I would say is most important, but it's one that students often want to skip over because it requires you to pause and really think about, okay, why did I highlight that? You're going to write a marginal note about the effects of the things that you highlighted. So draw some conclusions about it, make an inference, write just a word of what's the idea that you have in mind here. Maybe what tone does it set? Or maybe it's really trying to pick out why is this being repeated. So make sure that at this level you actually write some notes. The third level is beyond the lines. So this is when you take a pause at the end of a passage or the end of a chapter and you ask, so what? What's the main point? What are they trying, what's the author trying to get me to focus on and to think about? This is where you're questioning author's purpose. You're making connections to the text yourself. And you're also thinking about the author's message. What are they trying to convey to you? That's universal, or something about life, or something about people, human nature. The patterns are important to pay close attention to here. If you saw a lot of repetition or a lot of similar ideas tracking, that would be important to sum up at the end. Tone, what's the author's attitude, or how do they feel, what are their emotions or opinions about what they're talking about? Or theme is really important. You can really take a pause and just write out a thematic statement. What are they trying to convey to you about their topic? So make sure that this step you pause and look back at what you highlighted for levels 1 and 2 and write a few sentences about it at the end. Let's apply this three-level annotation strategy to chapter 3 of The Great Gatsby. So I pulled out the first couple paragraphs just to show you what I kind of think about when I'm first reading this chapter. So there was music from my neighbor's house through the summer nights. In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. Wow, that sentence is beautiful. I am going to highlight that because that just sticks out to me for a couple of reasons. So first, there's some really prominent imagery here. The blue gardens, whisperings, champagne, stars, all of these really set this romantic mood of the evening, or the evenings of the parties where people gather at Gatsby's house. Another thing that's striking about this sentence is the way that it describes the party guests. The men and girls came and went like moths. So to me, moths, I always see them kind of circling light all the time and wandering around aimlessly. So I kind of think that that the party guests are being described or characterized as aimlessly wandering, attracted to the bright light of the party. So maybe just making some inferences, they're just there because of all of the attraction that they see of all the party that's going to take place. So that's kind of my level one things I noticed about imagery and some of the word choices there. And what I think that does on the second level is sets the mood. It helps to characterize the party guests in a way. So continuing on, at high tide in the afternoon, I watched his guests diving from the tower of his raft or taking the sun on the hot sand of his beach while his two motorboats slit the waters of the Sound, drawing aquaplanes over cataracts of foam. So here, a lot of repetition of his, really making you notice that they don't own it. The guests are just partaking in it. So, but we see that Gatsby is the one that owns all of this stuff. On weekends, his Rolls Royce became an omnibus. Omnibus is an interesting word. I'm going to highlight that and come back to it. Bearing parties to and from the city between 9 in the morning and long past midnight. That's a long time. While his station wagon scampered like a brisk yellow bug to meet all trains. That's an interesting image as well. So kind of think about these two parts of the transportation piece that's being described. An omnibus is something that's for everyone. It's all inclusive. So he's really just welcoming anyone and everyone that wants to come to his parties. The fact that the selection of detail that it's running all day long to get people to the parties is interesting as well. It seems a little over the top. And then his station wagon, scampered. This is important word choice. Scampered to me, kind of think of a dog running away as fast as he can because maybe he's afraid. But scampered might imply that the station wagon is hurrying to and from and maybe a little bit worried. They want to make sure they get everyone to these parties. And it's a brisk yellow bug. That idea, that sense of rushing, again, here is going on. So the transportation piece, it's all inclusive, welcoming anyone and everyone, and even worried that they might miss someone. That right there shows you that I think Gatsby puts a lot into these parties, and he wants to make sure that everyone is able to be there. Gatsby's values. All right, continuing on. And on Mondays, 8 servants, including an extra gardener, toiled all day with mops and scrubbing brushes and hammers and garden shears, repairing the ravages of the night before. So obviously he has a lot of workers. He's extremely wealthy. He can afford to have all these people clean up, but ravages is a little bit more than the word mess. So think about this intentional word choice might show you that the destruction that's left after the party is pretty serious if it takes that many people really working to clean up. All right, continuing on, every Friday, 5 crates of oranges and lemons arrived from a fruiterer in York. Every Monday, these same oranges and lemons left his back door in a pyramid of pulpless halves. All right, I'm going to highlight a few things that really show us the excess in quantity. So every weekend, 5 crates. Every Monday, they leave. So really, there's just a lot of consumption going on these weekend parties. And there's a lot of provision as well on Gatsby's part. He's providing some extravagant goods here for his party guests. Oranges and lemons would have been more of a commodity, more expensive commodity at that time. Also, there was a machine in the kitchen which could extract the juice of 200 oranges in half an hour if a little button was pressed 200 times by a butler's thumb. All right, so a lot of these are really just selection of detail to show you the excess. of provision on Gatsby's behalf and consumption on party guests. All right, continuing on, we got this pattern of excess, over-the-top extravagance going on. Let's see if it continues. At least once a fortnight, a corps of caterers came down with several hundred feet of canvas and enough colored lights to make a Christmas tree of Gatsby's enormous garden. On buffet tables garnished with glistening hors d'oeuvres, spice-baked hams crowded against salads of harlequin designs, and pastry pigs and turkeys bewitched to a dark gold. In the main hall, a bar with real brass rail was set up, and stocked with gins and liquors and with cordials so long forgotten that most of his female guests were too young to know one from the other. All right, let's take a look here. We have several hundred feet of canvas, so they're bringing all this canvas down to make like a big dance floor, and then colored lights to make a Christmas tree. So that right there, and then enormous garden. That right there just shows you again how extravagant these parties are, and it makes me start to question why all of this for a bunch of parties every weekend? Why go over the top? Does it show us something about Gatsby? Does Gatsby want to impress others? Okay, sometimes your level 2 just might be questions. You're starting to draw inferences based on what clues you have, and then you can go back and answer those questions as you figure out more clues and details. One last thing that's interesting about this passage is this beautiful sentence here that describes all the food. Let's go with glistening hors d'oeuvres, harlequin designs. The salads are of harlequin designs. And then we have turkeys bewitched to a dark gold. These three words all put together just really scream to me this almost magical sense of the provisions that he's given. It's almost like he's pulling together a magical experience for these people and the types of foods that are being provided. They're glistening, so you're looking at these sparkling hors d'oeuvres. Harlequin designs would be really drawing imagery of clowns or jesters, so just very colorful and over the top. And then bewitched, this kind of mystical idea that the turkeys have this magical power that is being used to make them so beautiful and dark gold. So this, what Nick is seeing and describing, it just pulls you into the glamour of Gatsby's parties. So this is a really short passage, but I'm going to attempt to do the level 3 annotation, just kind of really thinking about the tone that is captured here from Nick's perspective, as well as some of the patterns. So I would say that Nick captures the excessive glamour of Gatsby's parties and shows a kind of a romantic view of these summer nights. So that kind of encompasses his attitude a little bit, but also a pattern that I'm seeing develop here on behalf of Gatsby's character. Right, so that's the 3-level annotation strategy. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how you should approach it. You don't need to highlight and do this many notes in every chapter, but I wanted to give you an idea of some things that you could focus on and try to pick up on as you read.